Greetings YouTube and welcome to the Blue Corner. In this video we're going to be doing a card for Vanguard discussion video, and it's going to be on Narcomi because there's finally enough cards spoiled that I can make a short video giving my thoughts on some of the cards we've seen. In particular, our G Guardian, our Gen Rare, yes, Gen Rare. I am extremely hyped for that, and some other things, but so far we've seen spoilers for Eradicator support featuring Vanquisher, and then finally the Vanquisher support. And I can tell you right now that the Vanquisher support is far and away better than the Erad support, and this is taking into account Zillion and the and the Descendant support. So not pictured on this page is Eradicator Dragonic Death Scythe. I'll tell you guys right now, that card is hot garbage. It is for all purposes and intents a Cho-Oh that is based like he's like Cho-Oh, but he's both better and worse than Cho-Oh. His one skill is on ride counterblast 1. If you have a Descendant Vanguard, your opponent chooses one of their own cards and kills them. Whoop-de-doo. He should have been a special counterblast 1 Erad, and then if you had an Erratic Vanguard like that, needing a Descendant Vanguard, it was a pointless restriction. As this, it really does kill his playability. And his other skill is when your Descendant Vanguard appears on Vanguard Circle, you throw him into the soul to retire something in the front row. Like, you're inconveniencing your opponent. You're not actually setting them back. It's like, oh no, I have to give up one of my cards. It's okay. I'm playing Paladins. I get to just call everything out of deck anyway and not waste any cards in my hand. Ha ha ha. And that's been my problem with random base retires. And just retires in general. Like, in order for retiring to be powerful, you need to be able to multiple retire for that kind of cost. Yes, I might be asking for something on the extreme, but when decks are able to just mass superior call for next to nothing, then what the hell is the point of just -1ing your opponent with these on-call skills? We don't have inherent advantage generating engines, so we're using cards from our hand to take cards away from their board, but they still have these large cards in hand amount of wow, it's difficult to talk here because of like how tilting this is, but like you're taking cards away from their field, but they still have these large hands because they built up these hands with the effects of their rear guards. Like when Time Leap goes off and does their thing, they end with a pretty sizable hand because of their draw skills. So then they just get to call these cards back down, do their shit, replenish their hand, and here you are going, what is even the point? Like the reason why Kagura's retire was at least good for a bit was that it wasn't so much as you were only retiring one thing, is that you were retiring one thing on your opponent's turn, which in the course messed up their tempo, which is what needed to be done. Unfortunately, that alone is not enough to get it done anymore, and as a result, Kagura's just kind of fading away because they can't deal with chain attack decks. And unfortunately, our G Guardian doesn't really do it either, but getting back to the Descendant support, we also got a new Lightning Phoenix and a new Zybo, which artwork-wise, they look pretty sick. Unfortunately, I think they're just worse Nahalims as they do the same thing. When your Vanguard with X name attacks, this unit gets power plus X amount. And in these guys' case, they also buff another unit by another power bracket. Unfortunately, these guys cost counterblast. And that right there kills their playability. As the Descendant deck doesn't really have an unflipping engine, and your Vanguard skills cost counterblasts. And some of your rear guards cost counterblasts, like Descendant Death Scythe costs counterblasts. And Descendant's Restamina will cost counterblasts. And yeah, these guys more or less mean that you don't have to use Descendant's counterblast to pump up 5k skill, which is nice. But I don't know, like I feel like they should have been power plus 2000 to itself another unit and no counterblasts. Because if you're doing a Descendant play and you restand to get the attack again, and then you use these guys defend, you're basically burning 4 counterblasts in order to achieve the same kind of power columns that Nahalim would do during an ace turn. And I'm just not sure about that. Like, as it is, I'm not seeing any reason to play Descendant when it already looks like Vanquisher is just far and away the better deck. And by the looks of it, Vanquisher might actually end up being better than Brawlers out of this set. And we'll get to that in a bit too. So let's talk about the G Guardian as well. Defending Supreme Dragon, Bulwark Dragon. So the skills are Thunderstrike 3, this unit gets shield plus 10k. Then at the end of the battle, this unit appears in Guardian Circle. For every 4 cards in your opponent's bind zone, You kill one of your opponent's rear guards in the front row that's at rest. So right there, we should look at this retire effect as a novelty and not a selling point on the card. The selling point on the card is that he gets shield plus 10k for Thunderstrike 3. Unfortunately, both of these skills pretty much mean you can't play this card and Eradicators, Kaiser, and Brawlers, which is really unfortunate because those decks really needed a G Guardian that could bind without the use of Thunderstrike so they could actually use the other G Guardian. As it is, those decks are more or less forced to just play Cray Elementals. Now, for the Vanquisher deck in itself, this card is good. Your first stride play, by the looks of it now, will let this guy be live right off the bat. Hell, both of his effects will be live after a Voltec Zapper Dragon turn, which the way this deck is going is going to be probably your first stride now. Like, it's going to become considerably easier to get that guy off. We'll get into that in a bit. And 25k G Guardian for no other costs, not bad. The retire effect is really only going to be useful against decks that leave their rear guards at rest and want to stand them back up with other effects, i.e. Lambros. Like, this can stop that if they go uh, Magnum Assault, stand back up, Magnum Assault, Tidal Assault, and they leave those guys at rest, then you can G-Guard the Tidal Assault and kill those things off, and the Lambros can't stand back anything up. And you can also use this against Bloom, as they'll go Ronnie, and you can use this on the second Ronnie attack in order to kill them, but against Paladins and Gears, not so much. And that's unfortunate. This also can't stop things like Wiseman, which is what this thing should be able to stop, as Wiseman is kind of an issue. So there's that. And then onto the more recent cards. Actually, first thing, Descendant's got his deck box and his sleeves now, and these look pretty friggin' sick. Like, I might import these, as we probably won't get them over here. Also, LOL, I guess Raging Form Dragon is also getting a grade 4. Nobody knew about this beforehand. I wonder how much the Shadow Paladin community is going nuts over this. I wouldn't be surprised if this card's actually good. Like, Raging Form Dragon itself was pretty good. Anyway, so next up, some of the more recently spoiled cards. First up, a new starter, Ascetic Draco Kid. And his skills are Thunderstrike 1 Rearguard. When he boosts during the battle, he gets power plus 2000. And then Generation Break 1 Auto. Retire this unit during your turn. When your either player's rearguard is retired by a card effect, you may pay the cost. If you do, your opponent retires and binds one of their rearguards. So, not bad. Like, that Thunderstrike 1 ability is not Generation Break restricted. So if you happen to land a hit with Shatura, this guy's now a 7k booster during the early game for a starter. That's good. And then his other effect is okay too. The only issue I have with this guy is that against decks that don't have a board, i.e. Grand Blue, he's not really going to do anything other than be a 7k booster, whereas Wild Run Dragoon is a guaranteed bind one, even though your opponent, granted either way your opponent chooses. So I don't know which is going to be the ideal starter. On paper, this guy is superior as he doesn't -1, he instead 1-for-1s, but you can't deny how good Wild Run Dragoon's power buff is, especially on something like Shatura if you're playing stands. Then there's Martial Arts Dragon. Skill is kind of +1, soul +1. When this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle, you may pay the cost. If you do, you retire and bind one of your opponent's front row rear guards. And then other skill is Generation Break 1, Rear Guard Circle, Thunderstrike 2, he gains 3k during your turn. Yeah. Honestly, him being Vanguard only kills his playability. If he was on Rear Guard, this card would have been amazing. Like, granted, he would have invalidated every single one of our on-call retire guys, i.e. Dragonic Death Scythe, Skyhowl Dragon. So in that sense, he probably would have been Generation Break 1, and I would have been fine with that. He would have been basically a Skyhowl Dragon, but he would have been generic, and he would have been usable in just about everything. But unfortunately, because he's Vanguard only, he's only going to be good on your turn 2 ride, and after that, he's just a vanilla. As a result, I don't think I'd run this. At this point, I'm probably still going to be running Shatura. I'm going to be running Voltator Dragon, and I'm going to be running Rock Climb Dragoon, as they're playable after you're on grade 3, and when you're after on Generation Break 1, and they retire and bind as well, or they bind as well, actually. So, unfortunately, not going to play this guy. And then we have the big one, Conquering Supreme Dragon, Dragonic Vanquisher VMAX, who is the generation rare for this set, and he's card number 1. So this is the second biggest card. Like, he is the defeat flare dragon of the set, and he's arguably going to be the money card of the set. First off, let's take a look at this guy's artwork. That's pretty sick. Like, he's charging up a spirit bomb. That's pretty sick. And I could only imagine how badass his secret rare foiling is going to be. And oh my god, it's going to be. I don't know if I'm going to go that far and get the secret rares or not, but he's good. He's played around. He can be played around, but he's still very good. And his effects are Generation Break 3, Thunderstrike 5, Counterblast 2, which right there, those are some pretty steep requirements, as generally our G units don't cost anything. But at the end of the battle, this unit attack the Vanguard, and if your opponent has no rear guards, you may pay the cost. If you do, choose one of your opponent's Vanguards, deal 1 damage. That's it. And his other skill is Continuous Vanguard. If this unit attacks a Vanguard, for each face-up Vanquisher in your G-zone, you can choose an opponent's rearguard as well, and in addition to battling the Vanguard, you can also attack that rearguard. So, he's basically a Big Bang Knuckle Turbo and a Samuel rolled into one card. Now, obviously, Dizmel gets around this. With Dizmel's effect, you can choose one of your rearguards and it gets immunity. And since you'll have a unit that can't be punched by this guy, you won't take the damage from VMAX's burn effect. However, right now at least, people only run one copy of Dizmel. So once you force out that Dizmel, you can go into this guy a second time and attempt to get them with that burn effect, because this guy's burn effect does not say that your opponent has to be at less than 5 damage. So if your opponent is at 5 damage and you're able to get this burn effect off, you automatically win. Like, there is no getting around that. Even if they perfect guard this, like, you deal a damage, they're done. And the big thing too is this guy finally gives Narukami something to do if their opponent is playing something like Grand Blue or Pale Moon, where they don't field any rear guards. No rear guards? Fine. I'm just coming at you with this guy and I'm going to deal you 1 damage. Now you have to call rear guards down, which then plays into the other units, in particular Voltec Zapper Dragon, Vanquisher Voltage, Conquest Dragon. Like, this is a really good card. And I'd like to say it's also pretty well designed, for as his costs are pretty hefty. Like, there is no way you're first striding this for that first effect. And there's no way you're going to be able to first stride this for his other effect too. Like, he is at least a second stride, and that's assuming you go into Voltage and flip up Voltage, which I don't think is correct. I think your play string is going to be Voltec Zapper Dragon, followed up by either Voltage or Conquest Dragon, depending on how the situation plays out. And then you can either go into VMAX, and then or go into another Voltage and then VMAX. And then VMAX. I don't know how many VMAX I'd run. It's going to be a minimum of 2, and depending on how many Dizmels see play, I might even go to 3, as I know people are going to be running Dizmels to play around this card. But if they end up running 2 Dizmels, then I guess I'll have to go up to 3 of this guy just to get around the second Dizmel. And we'll see how this goes. Like, VMAX is a very good card, and it's definitely something to keep in the back of your mind. I don't know if it alone is going to be enough to put Narukami back in the top tier, but it's a very powerful card that you definitely need to respect. As if you aren't running Dizmel, this thing will get you at 5. And unless you're just have a sack, I guess, and you hit the heal trigger, then you're dead. And it's a very Narukami-esque way of playing to deal with the format. And yeah, it makes you commit cards to the board so you don't lose to this guy, which then allows Narukami to play the game it wants to play, which is retire and bind, and then get big and scary at the same time. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that. We still have more cards we have to wait on, i.e. our Thunderstrike G Guardian, I mean our Thunderstrike Perfect Guard, our Thunderstrike Grade 3, our Thunderstrike Stand Trigger, which is all but confirmed to be happening, plus whatever Trainee Monk Dragon does. I don't know what his ability is, but I hope to God it's an unflipping engine, because that Counterblast 2 is also something to keep in the back of mind. Like, at this point, you pretty much have to run Vian, the stand trigger, otherwise you're just going to run a Counterblast. Anyway, that's it for the video. I've already gone a fair amount, but I had a lot to talk about too. Tell me your thoughts on VMAX and the other cards below. Until next time, this is Blue Starter 9, jacking out.